Um, Good day. Welcome back to my course. We'll be talking about parsing here. Let me correct that. Operator precedence parsing. And from the previous class, we talked about shift reduce parsing, and then we were able to decide and conclude that ambiguity affects how you actually parse. And to deal with that, we had to further create more parsing techniques. And so we came up with the operator precedence parsing. But operator precedence parsing itself also has some limitations and problems. But first, we need to talk about the operator grammar. What does an operator grammar look like? The operator grammar is any grammar that has the following properties. Property number one, it has no empty on the right side of the production. So, for instance, let's say we have the non-terminal A, it should not derive an empty. This is not an operator grammar. Once this appears in any production of the grammar, it's not an operator grammar. Number two condition is that we shouldn't have two adjacent non-terminals. We shouldn't have a. I think this E is too big. Uh, we shouldn't have, let's make it small. It's wrong. We shouldn't have two adjacent non-terminals. It's worse when you have three adjacent non-terminals. And so on and so forth. These are not operator grammar. What does an operator grammar look like? An operator grammar will simply have things like this. It would be maybe A plus A, B plus B, B star. This, let's say, this B, or even minus A. That works. There's one non-terminal, one terminal, one non-terminal. Uh, this in this case we are having two we're having adjacent stuffs going on, but it's not two adjacent non-terminals. These are terminals, terminals, non-terminals. So this still checks out. So these are the things that determine the operator grammar. So this is what an operator grammar is supposed to look like. We shouldn't have adjacent non-terminals. This makes it weird. I mean, think about like 2 plus 2, 3 plus 3, 5 plus 5. Once you're having 3, 3, okay, so what does that mean? Or we're having absolutely nothing staring at us like, what's going on here? There's absolutely nothing there. So yeah, we can't use that. Now, having established that, we are going to use an example to clarify how to deal with uh, op- um, operator grammars and how to make them in case you do not have them. Say we are given this example. We have the following grammar. We have E derives E A E. This and ID, boldface ID. And then we have A derives plus or this should be an all. Plus or minus or star or divided by or um, then the exponent. Now from the onset or upon arrival, we already see that there's a problem. There are three adjacent non-terminals, and that is a deal breaker for us. So how do we make this into an operator grammar? Simple. We just make sure this non-terminal does not exist by putting all the values back into this place. All these, I think, it's a lazy way of handling stuff. We want to not stress ourselves by having to repeat all of this, so we just made it a non-terminal and deal with that. That destroys the operator grammar. So we need to stop that. Now, how do we fix this? We are going to simply put all the non-terminals in between and remove the a non-terminal. So we have put all the terminals in between. So we have E plus E or E minus E or E star E, or E divided by E, or E to the power of E, or ID. No, let's just add the remaining. Or this, or this, or this. Yeah, it took a lot more work to write it, but this is officially an operator grammar, so it checks out. Then we can now work with this. We can do the operator precedence parsing with this guy. We couldn't do it with this guy. It was just too weird. But doing it with this checks out, and we can work our work. We can operator proceed whatever it is we are doing. Okay, so while we have that, we now have to consider what the problem is, and we have to also note that we don't really care too much about the non-terminals. We don't really care too much about the non-terminals. The non-terminals are important, but it doesn't influence the parsing. It's not the non-terminals that influence the parsing. It's the operators that actually influence the parsing. So you want you want to focus more on how the operators actually work hand in hand. You know the normal PEMDAS, is it PEDMAS now? God, forgive me for that. But some things take precedence over the others. Like parentheses is important, exponential is important, the multiplication and division, all these things, some precede each other. We know that we have to deal with multiplication first before we deal with subtraction. We have to get rid of the parentheses first before we start dealing with addition. So we know that precedence is actually a thing, but yeah, that's that. However, we have some problems with the operator precedence passing. Though it seems very like, wow, I mean, like, what else do we need? We've got everything we are looking for. This is a very very good precedent passing technique. We don't need anything else. We do actually, because while that seems very effective for 2 plus 2, 2 times 2, 2 divided by 2, that is a very very small part of grammar. Grammars are huge, and they should actually, yeah, there's so many things to do, especially programming, that having just 2 plus 2, 2 times 2, and that very very small class of grammars is very very inefficient. It's too small. It's very very small. So disadvantages. Number one, that's not even all the that's not even the biggest problem. We have things like minus. Minus is a very very funny guy. It has different precedences in itself. Just it can be two things. It can be unary and it can be binary. And the unary form has more precedence than the binary form. So from there, we already shot ourselves in the foot, because I mean we are doing precedence, yay, and now we have something that is a two-faced bastard, and we don't know what to do. So I mean it becomes a problem when we have things like this. So this is a disadvantage number one. We kind of get lost when we are dealing with things with multiple faces. Number two problem, the relationship between the grammar of the language that is being passed and the operator precedence passer is tenuous. They are not very very connected like that. You see how we were discarding the non-terminals. We're like saying, oh, this E doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. It kind of does, because if we just discard the E, we can't exactly do anything, can we? But at the same time, since it's about operators, E is not that valuable, and because of that kind of relationship, sometimes we might actually pass things we shouldn't pass, and we are not even sure that even what we passed is accepted by the general language. So the next problem is poor relationships between poor relationship between the language and the passer. I mean, there was no love for the non-terminals, and that's kind of wrong, because the non-terminals are a vital part of a CFG. They are very, very important. So when we discard that, it kind of creates some kind of tension and the passer. Now, what is the final disadvantage on this guy? The last disadvantage is it's only a small class of grammar that actually uses operator precedence. A small class of grammar. Uh, think about it. In programming we have if statements, we have for loops, we have while, do while, we have functions, we have so many things going on. We have classes, we have things like we have keywords, we have public, static, void, main. We have all manner of things like that, and then simply we have to forgo all of that to deal with 2 plus 2, 5 times 5, 5 divided by 5. So you see that there's a huge limit to this guy. So as good as it sounds, it's still very limited. So we kind of still need something else, but we'll get to those later. It's simple, which is good. I guess that's a very good thing to have. It's simple, and because of that, I mean, we keep it. Yes, we can work with that. Now we have to talk about how this operator precedence works. How does it work? So now we have to consider the following precedence symbols. There are some relations rather that we have to consider. We have to consider this, we have to consider this guy, and we have to consider this. And this is not less than, equal to, greater than. That's not what's going on. When we have, because since we are talking about operators, we need operands, right? So when we say things like a in this case, actually the operands are not that important, but then we are taking two operators, and operators are terminals, right? Operators are terminals. And how do we mark terminals? We mark terminals with the beginning parts our um of our alphabet, English alphabet. So we have, let's represent a as a terminal, which is an operator, and then we have this guy. What is going on here? We have this a greater than b. That's what it looks like, but it's not. You notice the dot here. So what does this say? This says a takes precedence. A takes precedence over b. When we have this less than, like, guy, it looks like a less than, but it's not a less than. We say a yields precedence to b. We're just trying to say that somebody is the odd shot here, somebody is the goon here, somebody is the boss, somebody is submitting. So when we have this guy here, we are saying a is bigger, a is more important than b at that point in time. And when we say this, we say a is less valuable, less important than b at that point. So that's what we mean. A takes precedence over b, and a yields precedence to b. Now when we have the um, enlightened equal to, because I mean that dot looks like a monk's dot. So when we have an enlightened equal to sign over here, we are just simply saying a has same precedence to b. So this is what these symbols mean, and I hope you understand. All right, we have to note that these are relations. These are relations, and we will need them a lot as we go on. So we usually need a table sometimes to represent what is what. We will have things like identifiers are not exactly operators, but since they are terminals, they are also considered. And what is going on is that we are trying to still parse, right? And in parsing, we need to we are dealing with handles, and operator precedence parsing also is a bottom up guy. I should have mentioned that earlier, but it's a bottom up guy, and because of that, we are reducing. So since it's a parser, the aim is still to reduce back to the start symbol. So since we are dealing with operator grammar here, we are having to reduce things like this back to the start symbol. And we have to note that because ID is a terminal, ID can also be reduced. ID terminals might also be able to be reduced to another non-terminal and eventually back to the start symbol. So ID is also considered. Now, what this operator precedence parsing basically is doing is it's creating delimiters for the for the operators. You know, delimiters can be white space, it can be tabs, it can be new lines, but in this case we are creating delimiters to make to actually control the precedence. In the last time we were having things like do we do e plus e star e? What do we do first? Do we do e star e, or do we do e plus e first before star? And because there were things like, okay, we're reversing and then we had multiple occurrences popping up, we then had to do something. We had to do two different shift reduce parsings, and we arrived at two different the same answer eventually, but two different processes. uh but we also know that it's wrong to do e plus e before e times e. It's terribly wrong. That's primary school basics gone wrong. So we have to do the e times e first before e plus e, because of the importance of the multiplication to the addition. So this was wrong primarily, but because we weren't talking about precedence or anything like that, they checked out, they were accurate, they were right. Now in this case, it's going to be wrong for us to just do that. So the operator precedence parser uses these relationships as delimiters, and you have stuff like this going on. And since we are dealing with stack, and the input buffer, we're having the uh, bottom of stack marker and the right end marker for the input symbol. Now these guys are the beginning and the end. It looks like that. But then, how does the delimiting of the string actually look like? This is how it will look. We have this. Then, in the case where we are having the string id plus id, we are delimiting all of these guys. We want there to be some structure. We want precedence to fall into place. So we are going to just say that id is of greater precedence. It takes it like dollar sign yields precedence to id, because id is more important. Id is actually, it takes more precedence over this, but since this is the arrangement, we are having dollar sign yields precedence to id. Now look at this. I'm just going to wait for that announcement to end. Mm. Sorry about that. There's an announcement in our hostel, and it's kind of loud. All right. So this is the string. We have shown that the dollar sign takes more precedence to yields precedence to id, but then id takes precedence to the plus, because we shouldn't be having the terminal is more. This terminal is very, very important. This id is actually like the 2, the 3 there, and when we are doing 2 plus 3, 3 plus 2, we have to understand that the things we are adding is more important than the operator in this case. So id is important. Id yields it takes precedence over the plus, and it takes precedence over all the other operators. Id takes precedence over multiplication, takes precedence over the division, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. So in that case, plus will also yield precedence to this other id, because id is more valuable than it. So we have id. Now at the end, when nothing remains again, we have id taking precedence over the dollar sign at the other side. So it scans from left to right, and then from here, this is saying, okay, it yields precedence to id, and then at this point in time, id takes precedence over this, and after doing all of this, we should reduce back to the start symbol when all the parsing is said and done, since we are trying to reduce back to the start symbol in the first place. So having said that, we now want to establish the way the operator precedence actually does these things. So I'm going to clean these. I'm going to leave the symbol so you can see. Okay, so number one, what does it do? It scans the string, as I said, from left end to the leftmost, this guy. So let's say we have dollar sign this id, and we have this plus then we have this again, ID, this, and we have this. Let's say we have that. This is a delimiter. Instead of us using space, because space means absolutely nothing, we are going to use this guy, and this guy actually helps with us. You can already see the yields precedence, takes precedence, yields precedence, takes precedence, acting as the delimiters in this case instead of white space. So we keep scanning, 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 scanning till we reach this guy. Then after we get to that guy, we can just then the next step of the option is to whatever happened in this from this guy to this guy becomes the handle. I'll take it again. We are scanning. Okay. We are scanning from the left end. Bless me. Scan from the left end to the leftmost this guy. So we'll be scanning like this until we reach this. When we reach this guy, what do? We consider everything from this guy to this guy, the leftmost version of this, because there might be more. There might be more that's showing up. But when we hit the first, whatever all of this is will be our handle. Whatever happened between this guy and this guy will be our handle. And then we'll need to handle that. Did you get what I just did? Since this is our handle, we'll need to handle it first. Nobody's clapping. Anyway, then after this is handled, we will now deal with this because this is the next handle that will pop up. And after we handle that, we will come to the last handle and then undo that as well. And then before long, we'll be left with the start symbol, which means we have finished everything, and then we just accept. So then after we actually undo the first one, what then happens again? We actually need to in that case, we'll have a situation where maybe we are still needing to add more things. There's still more things going on. Since if we have a non-terminal, it is not very important, so we can ignore it. But there will still be an existing this guy going on from behind us. Since we are ignoring, let me just write that somewhere else. Leave that there. Let's say we had $sign id.id, and id here was our handle. After we reduce this to the non-terminal, we will have stuff like, now when we have this, we won't have this anymore because this guy is no longer important. It's not controlling, it's not influencing the parser. But what do we have? We still have this guy. So what do we do when we finish reducing and then we don't have anything like that on top of the as the handle on top of the stack? Then we would scan again. We will have to scan back on the left till we find this guy. When we find this guy, then we can now continue depending on what is going on. We'll have a table. A table will tell us how the relationships are occurring. But then we might have a plus. We might have a plus, we might have a minus, we might have a divided by. Depending on what is happening, we will look at all that. But the way the operator precedence just works is it will scan until it reaches this. Then it will take whatever it is was from here to here as the handle and perform operations on that. And then it would, after dealing with it, scan back till it finds this guy. And then depending on what the operator that is coming in next will do, it will react with whatever is coming next, and then we'll have something else. We'll do an example to do that. Yes, we'll do an example to cover that. But usually when we are having things like this, let's say we have done all the reductions we have, and we now have things like e plus e star e, then $sign. In the true way of this looking, these e's are not important. We are just going to have simply the $sign yields precedence to plus, which yields precedence to star, and the star takes precedence over the $sign. So these are the real things that really matter here. So when you are having things like there's an existing non-terminal, and then there's something else on top of the at the end of the input buffer, and we are shifting the operator. We are no longer dealing with this guy. We are dealing with the operator behind it. Non-terminals are not affecting the parser. I've said that over and over again because it's very important. If it's not clear to you, please be calm. I will do an example to deal with everything and then open that up to you. We'll also talk about the rules, and then we'll take a look at a table. Now, I'm just trying to just establish that the non-terminals are not very, very important as far they do not influence the parser. What totally influences the parser are these terminals and the bottom and the right end markers. These are what influence the stack's decisions, not the non-terminals. Now, some of the rules that work, we'll look at the rules and then we'll do an example. Operator precedence. Without an example, it will be a lot of information, and an example will clear all the doubts. I'm going to be very, very slow with the example, so you get it. But here are the rules that influence the relations between the operators. Now, the rule number one: if an operator has an higher precedence to another operator, we say, let's say we have the operator. Let me use this. Operator 1 has an higher precedence to operator 2. How do we show that? We show that by saying this guy takes precedence over this guy. That's rule number 1. And if operator 2 is coming first, operator 2 will still yield precedence to operator 1. Note that arrangements might be important depending on how the string is arranged. Some operators might come first, and the way they will come first will determine how we structure the relationship. This guy is more valuable than this guy, regardless of the arrangement. So in case this guy comes first, this guy takes precedence to this. In case this guy is coming first, this guy still yields precedence to this guy, and that influences the parser's decision. And I'll use an example to show that. Because instead of us to just be shifting to the stack, we are using the delimiters to determine whether we should reduce or to shift. So that's why all of these relationships rules are important. So now let's say, for instance, what has more precedence between the plus and the star, which is multiplication. This is addition, this is multiplication. Since star has more precedence than plus, we can say that star takes precedence over plus. But what happens when it's the plus that we are looking at first? Plus will still yield precedence to star. Plus will yield precedence to star. Let's say we have star, and then we have this guy. Star will yield precedence to this guy, and if this guy comes first, the exponential, it will still take precedence over star. Know the rules. We'll apply them soon, but you need to know the rules. You need to know the rules so that when we are looking at the table and we are looking at the relationships, we will know exactly what we are doing, because these influence our parser's decision. That's rule 1. What's the next rule? The next rule is that if operator 1 and operator 2 have the same precedence, what do we do? Then we can say that depending on whether they are left, now we have to talk about left associative and right associative. But these guys are of equal, they are actually equal, they are of equal precedence. So let's say we have plus and plus, or star and star, or this and this. So what is left associative and right associative? Left associative just means that when you are performing the operations, you are going from left to right, from this point to this point. Let me give an example. Let's say you have 2 plus 2 plus 5. You don't do 2 plus 7 and then 9. That's not how you do it. You do this first. We have 4, then we do 4 plus 5, then we have 9. That is left associative. Let's go back again. Let's say you have 3 plus 5 minus 11. Take a look at that. You don't do 5 minus 11 first, then 3 plus whatever is the result. You are going to have to go from the left to the right because these are left associative. So you have 8 minus 11. Then from left to right again, you now have minus 3. And this is where we notice that minus is a unary operator here, and because of that has an higher precedence, but it's not operating on anything, so we can just ignore that. But now you understand the left associative. What happens? What do we say about the right associative? What does right associative now look like? For right associative, very few operators actually have that kind of relationship. But for right associative, we are scanning from right to left, and the first thing that comes to mind is 2 square, which can be written as 2 to the power of 2. Now, how do we scan this? We don't do this. We don't go like this. We don't go from the left to the right. We go from right to the left. So 2 raised to the power 2 is what? Is 4. But then what do we do when we have something bigger? We have 2 to the power of 2 to the power of 2 to the power of 2, which is written as 2 to the power of 2 to the power of 2 to the power of 2. We don't do this first before this before this. We don't go like this. We go like this. So what do we do first? We do 2 to the power of 2 here first. We will now have 2 to the power of 2 to the power of 4. Then we'll go again. 2 to the power of 4 is what? We'll have 2 to the power of 4 should be 16. So we have 2 raised to the power 16. This is where my brain is not going to be able to, like, I don't know what this is. This is probably a very, very long number, but you get the point. You are going in from right to left, and because of that, this is right associative. I'm going through all of this because the left and the right associative relationships are very weird, even though they are the same symbol. So for operators with equal precedence, like plus and plus, star, and this guy, for plus and plus is left associative. Star and star is left associative also. But exponential is right associative. So because of that, the way they take precedence over themselves or yield precedence is important. So for the left associative, we are going to have this guy takes precedence over this guy in the case where this guy comes first, or we'll have um, this guy takes precedence over this guy when it comes first. That's for left associative. This is for left associative. Now, what about right associative? Right associative will have this going on. It will have yields precedence to this guy, and even when the order is reversed, the same still applies. This yields precedence to this. That's what will happen. So you have to know which one is right associative, which one is left associative. We'll talk about things like minus that has, but for now we can just say that minus and minus is also left associative, and division is also left associative. So when we have 6 divided by 3, we don't do 3 first and then 6. We do 6 divided by 3, not 3 divided by 6 when we are saying that. So 6 divided by 3 is 2, not 0.5. After having said that, we now then establish one more rule which is important. Uh, Okay. All right. So the last rule that we need to note is that ID is so valuable that regardless of whatever position is taken, it is either yeah, it is taking precedence over. And in the case where an operator comes first before ID, that operator yields its precedence to ID. So what does this look like? We will have things like when an operator comes first before ID, it would yield precedence to ID. And when ID comes first, ID will take precedence over the operator. This is what we have. So this is what we have. Now, in the case where we are having things like parentheses, the open and close parentheses, the way they work is funny, but yeah, you can easily know them. So when we have the open, let's deal with this first. For the open bracket, open parentheses, we are going to be always yielding precedence, regardless of who is coming first. So let's say we have the operator, we are yielding precedence, to it. So what happens when it is reversed? We are still yielding precedence to. So regardless of how the open bracket comes, we are always yielding precedence. So the whatever comes first, once it's dealing with an open parenthesis, it is always yielding precedence. What about when we are dealing with closed parenthesis? When we are dealing with this, it's always taking precedence. Regardless of who is on the on the spectrum, addition, division, anything, this guy takes precedence over this guy, and if this guy is on the other end, it is still taking precedence over the close. So for open, it yields precedence regardless. Remember, for open, this is what happens. For closed, this is what happens regardless of who is first, regardless of if it is the operator first before the open bracket or not. So this is the final rule that you need to note. Then usually we have tables that we work with. Clean this up. Also clean this. Now take a look at this table. Scale it up. Okay, so we have a table. Let me scale it up and show. So look at this table. There are some assumptions to be made on this table. It looks overwhelming at first, but let me just break it down. These operators are coming first before this, or we can read it two ways. What happens when plus comes before plus? When plus comes before plus, what do? We can just say okay, or when plus is meeting plus next, like the thing that is relating is plus and plus. Let's say plus and plus is relating. I think that's the better way to say it. Plus and plus is relating because it is left associative, regardless of their value. Plus takes precedence over plus, like this. Now, when plus and minus is relating, plus and minus, plus and minus is relating. We're having a thing of plus and minus relating. What do we have? We have plus taking precedence over minus. And so on and so forth like that. I should just do it on a different layer. Okay, so now what do we have here? We have plus and minus, right? Plus and minus, and let me add the assumptions that were used to create this table. The first assumption was that the caret is the highest operator, highest operator. It has the highest precedence and is right associative. Don't misquote me. Don't. This as is not the as. It's association. Now, number two, we have um, the star, which is multiplication, and the division, which are the next highest. Next highest, and they are left associative. And then on number three, we have plus and minus being the lowest precedence. And are also left associative. Note one thing, they didn't say that plus has more precedence than minus. They said plus and minus are the lowest precedence and they are both less left associative. So let's just say that plus and minus have similar precedence in this point, but then since they are left associative, whatever is on the left is going to take more precedence over what's on the right. So with that as our information that we can work with, let me just scale that down. Plus plus is what? Plus takes precedence over plus. Plus minus plus is what? So we are looking at them like this, 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 and then can do this. Oh, they can. Oh, sorry. So minus plus minus will take precedence over plus because of that assumption that they are both of the lowest precedence and then it's left associative. So since minus is coming first from the left, then minus takes more precedence over plus. This is not PEMDAS. This is us creating a table that we are working with for uh, our operator precedence parser, and it might look different, but some things are primary to note. This was because there's an assumption. Use the BODMAS precedence when nothing is stated. When they say create the passing, it would create the relation table yourself. Then you know that plus takes more precedence over minus actually, regardless of whether it's left associative or not. Plus is more important than minus, and star is more important than plus. Star is more important than minus, and so on and so forth. I think because of time, I'm not going to break everything down, but let's just keep on going. You will notice with ID that ID and ID. If we draw this, look at this. At this point, you see that the table is not there. It doesn't have anything marked in. There's no entry. That means there will be an error. There's an error that will pop up if something like this happens. We are going to ignore ID relating to ID. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. So we are not going to add anything to that. ID and the open bracket 2 doesn't have a relationship. They are not relating. They shouldn't relate. They should not relate. The dollar sign and the dollar sign also should not relate. Those are the things you should note. I think it's wiser for me to use an example to further break this down. I shouldn't just say all of this and then not use an example. So I'm going to okay. For instance, let's even just try and create a passing table by ourselves, like a relations table for this operator precedence. So we have plus, we have minus, we have star, or because of this, let's say we have star, we have this, no, we have this, and then we have ID. Let's draw the table for the relations. We have this. So uh, plus star, create an ID. We have plus star, create an ID. Okay, let's say we have dollar sign also. One thing to note is that of the worst precedence, it's the dollar sign. It's useless. It's like it's the worst precedence of all of them. Think about the last born. That's what this guy is. Not I'm not saying last born. I'm saying like the precedence, the order of scale is that this guy is it's so little on the scale of preference that it's considered impossible. Sorry to all the last borns out there. I am not insulting you. I'm getting back into the stuff before I misspoke. All right, because we know plus and plus is left associative, so we have to take precedence over um, plus and star. Even dealing with left precedence and not, star is more important than plus, so plus yields precedence to star. Now plus and caret, plus will also yield precedence to caret. Plus and ID, plus will still yield precedence to ID, but plus and star, I mean, it has been losing so far. It's going to take apart the star because it's of more importance than the dollar sign rather. It takes more precedence than the dollar sign. So we have that. Now star takes more precedence to plus, but since star and star is also left associative, it takes precedence over the star. Star yields precedence to the caret because this power is greater than power. Power pass power. So it yields precedence, but then it also yields precedence to ID. So we have that, but then it takes precedence over dollar sign. So we have this. Now we have the caret. Caret will take precedence over the plus anytime, any day, one on one. It's like boxing. Got that. Okay, so um, the caret takes precedence over the star, so takes precedence. But then caret takes it doesn't take precedence over this because it is right associative, so it yields precedence to the other caret. And then caret will yield precedence to ID. Okay, so we yield precedence to ID, and then it will definitely beat up the dollar sign in combat. So we have that. Okay, so ID takes precedence over plus, ID takes precedence over star, ID takes precedence over um, the caret. ID does not take precedence over ID. That shouldn't happen. Nothing should go on here, but ID takes precedence over the dollar sign. And then the dollar sign yields precedence to everybody except itself, which it will just pretend as if we can. I mean, nothing is going on there. Nothing is going on there. Nothing is going on there. So we have created a relations table ourselves. Clap for yourself. All right.